Hey guys, it's Cindy here. Welcome back to Seeing Blind. Today we are starting our uh, a new version of Blind Community Chats. We're opening it up to the community of parents with disabilities. So today we are focusing on parenting for anyone who has a disability. You can be a caregiver, a grandparent, anyone who is caring for a child, but also managing a disability. That's going to be kind of the perspective we're going to look through a lens on today's discussion. So I'm very, very excited. My son is with me. He is having a sick day. He is supposed to go to preschool today, but he is sick. And so I am a little scatterbrained. I'm going to be trying to care for him at the same time during our discussion. So speaking of parenting, man, I'm pulling double duty right now. So bear with me if anything happens with him. But I wanted to welcome anyone who is new to the channel. Please hit that thumbs up and the subscribe button so that you can catch future live streams. You can also listen to these podcast style. If for those of me who are my blind peoples, we always like to listen to things podcast style, and that's usually the way these conversations take form. Very casual. And if you have any questions, you are welcome to put them in the live chat on the side, guys. Please make sure you say hello, introduce yourself. Are you a new parent? Are you a future parent? Have you been at it for years? Have any words of wisdom, any gold nuggets you'd like to share with the community? This is part of us all just kind of joining together, supporting each other. Parenting is not easy, right? It is a major challenge. No one's prepared for it when it happens, and it's one of those things where it's not. It's even. We add more problems and more challenges to the plate when we're also managing a disability on top of it. And so that's when community is even more important. So please, guys, hit subscribe. And if you pull down the description box, you're going to find all kinds of details, including chapters. I'm going to be adding chapters to today's discussion in a few days. So after this has been posted for a while, you're welcome to come back once chapters are available, and you'll be able to navigate today's discussion a little bit more efficiently, as well as catch my featured guests, all of her contact information, her websites, her social media, and all that good jazz, because I have with me, you guys, someone I am I've just recently discovered you, Crystal, but I am extremely impressed with your work. It's definitely in line with a lot of my parenting style and mentality, and where I didn't start out, but it's the direction I want to go in. It's the type of parent I want to be. And so, guys, this is Crystal, the parenting coach. Check out the description box for all of her contact and social media. And today I'm really excited to share sort of a new perspective on parenting that I think a lot of parents with disabilities is going to connect with. You're going to really like this approach because it's not the behavioral approach that we all kind of grew up thinking, that 1, 2, 3 magic thing and timeouts and stuff like that. I agree. Sometimes it works, but a lot of times it doesn't. And what are we sacrificing when we are trying to push these types of behavioral correction type of parenting styles? And so anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Crystal and let her introduce herself. Crystal, tell us, how did you get into this? Tell us where we can find you and what you would like to share with us today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cindy. I'm excited to be here. I have to start with the caveat that I don't have any disabilities. So I know that these tools and principles that I'm going to teach you today are helpful across the board. But just so you know, that's the perspective that I'm coming from. And why I think this is so interesting is because the kind of parenting style, you've probably heard these names before. Some people call it positive parenting, intentional parenting, gentle parenting, respectful parenting. There's so many different names. what I like to use is radical connection. And the reason I call it that is because radical actually means going back to the root of. So it's kind of like going back to our natural style of parenting, what we would naturally parent as. And radical is also a
Mm,
little bit against the grain. So it's a little bit different than maybe the norm. And so I see often on Facebook, as I'm sure you do, moms say, I don't know what to do about this. My kid is doing such and such behavior. And almost every comment, if not all the comments that I see are, you need to be more strict. Have you tried timeouts? Have you tried taking away his favorite toy? Have you tried, right? It's all of these very more disciplinarian or authoritarian approaches to parenting. And
mm-hmm.
that's kind of what we've been taught, right? That's usually for
Right.
most people, that's how our parents parented and how their parents parented. Um,
Right.
so radical connection is a switch, and it's not focusing so much on behavior modification, like what they're doing and getting them to switch it. It's more focused on relationship and on connection. And when we switch the focus to relationship and connection, the behavior actually follows. Over time, their behavior will be better, but not because we're forcing them or coercing them into do something, but because they feel accepted and seen and cared for and connected to us. And so the behavior will naturally improve over time. So that's kind of the premise of the parenting style that I teach. And the reason that I usually caution people against using so many rewards and punishments is because that can break down our relationship with our child over time. That over time, if they feel that kind of force and coercion to do what we want them to do, that they don't necessarily feel like they can be themselves. Whoever they are, whatever that little person is that we're raising, we want them to feel like they can be whoever they want to be and whoever they need to be. And we want them to have that space so that they can grow. My favorite parenting book is called Rest, Play, Grow. And the whole premise
Yes.
is that
Love
when they
it.
can, isn't it great? It's so great.
Yes.
If you are listening to this, Dr. Deborah McNamara is my favorite, and she was on my podcast this week and again next week. So you can hop over there
Yay.
and check it out.
I can't
But
wait to catch that. Yes.
it's so good. So the whole premise is that our children can rest in our care when they have that relationship and that connection with us, that they can finally kind of breathe that sigh of relief. Like, I can be myself, I can be who I want to be. And then they can play. And through play, they learn. And playing, even as a teenager, I talk to a lot of people who have parents or parents of teens or parents of adults or grandparents, like you mentioned. This helps for everyone because playing
Yes.
means like interacting and learning and growing. And so it doesn't mean just like, only having toddlers that sit and play with toys. So a lot of the learning happens through play, and then they can grow to be these wonderful, emotionally intelligent humans that we want to raise. So that's
Yes.
the parenting kind of style and approach in a nutshell that I believe in. And if you want to learn more about it, I will mention where you can connect with me. But Rest, Play, Grow is my favorite parenting book. So I would highly suggest that. And as I said, Deborah McNamara was on my podcast this week and next week. So if you head over to the Freedom Moms podcast, you can catch that. There's also a parenting summit happening today and tomorrow that she's speaking at called Raised Good. So if you happen to be
Ooh.
watching this live, you'll have to go hop over and get registered today. But I just found out about it last night. I'd never heard of Raised Good before, but it's an Instagram account. And if you hop over there, you can register for that online parenting summit. And there's really, really great people speaking over there. Dr. Tina Payne Bryson, who's also one of my favorites, Dr. Gordon Neufeld, who wrote the book Hold On to Your Kids. That's actually how I got started in this. I have my kids are my youngest is 5, and then I have an 8-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a one that'll be 15 in a couple weeks. And when he was like
Wow.
2 or 3, my parents were basically like, we didn't parent in the way that we should have. We kind of parented wrong. And here's this book, and you should read it. And we're going to change our parenting style. And it was such a great book, and it was really eye opening. And immediately it resonated with me. I knew that that's how I wanted to parent. But kind of my unique spin on this is that I spent a decade reading all of these parenting books and loving it, but feeling worse and worse and worse about my parenting because I wasn't parenting in that way.
Yes.
So not only do I teach this idea of radical connection, I actually became a certified life coach. And I found that it's the life coaching tools, the mindset tools, the emotion tools, the inner healing that we do on ourselves that helps us to be able to parent this way. And that now I actually believe that this mode of parenting is very natural and very intuitive, and that we would all parent in this way if we do the inner healing and the inner work necessary. Not perfect, because imperfection is actually a gift we can give our children to not always be perfect all the time. But in general,
Yes.
this is what I see in working with my clients, is that when we can just kind of move through all of the muck that might be going on in our brain, that we can move to a more intuitive and natural parenting style without a lot of encouragement or push from me. I don't The reason that I when Cindy reached out to me, and I initially was like, "Oh, can I help parents with disabilities if I don't know anything about disabilities?" And immediately I was like, "Yes, these concepts are universal, because um
Hmm.
I don't tell people what to do in parenting. They come to me and they want to know what to do, and I don't give them the to-dos. I don't say, use this phrase with your child, or when they do this, you should do this. I help them tap into their own answer. And I truly
Yes.
believe that we all have our own inner parenting expert, our own intuition. And I just
Yes.
help people uncover theirs. And I don't tell them, like, do this in this situation. I don't have to know about everything. I've had lots of clients who've come to me with situations that I know nothing about, and I'm still able to
Hmm.
help them, because it really is tapping into their own answer, finding their own answer.
Yes. Yeah, I one of the my favorite and one of my favorite quotes from the book Rest, Play, Grow, which I too highly recommend. I was so blown away with how much I connected to this book and how much everything just clicked into
Mm-hmm.
place for me. But one of my favorite things that I think a lot of people, parents with disabilities, can connect with as well is, you know, a lot of people, we grow up in this culture of Googling. We'll just Google it. We'll just search for
Mm-hmm.
this answer, search for that answer, or ask this person or this. And so it's this advice seeking. It's this, let me get the instructions, let me get the how to, the know how, all this
Mm-hmm.
information. And when we apply that to our parenting, we're seeking all these external sources and all of these things to tell us how to parent, and and as if their answers are superior to our own. And
Oh, yes.
instead instead of really gut checking yourself and trusting your inner parent. You know your
Mhm.
child and you love your child more and better than any other person on this planet. So why would their answers be superior to your own? Check your gut and check your inner intuition, because I think that is where
Mhm.
we will be the best parent for our child. That's where we will find the best answer. And because our answer will come from that place, I think we'll feel less shame and we'll feel I think a lot of parents with disabilities, I'm going to go ahead and just add this perspective. I feel like we experience that conflict of a person with a disability feeling that constant, daily, hourly reminder of our limitations, our lack, our inability, and the constant pressure it is to think creatively, to problem solve, to adapt to the society's expectations of us. If we're not able to perform the same way as everyone else, we got to figure out how, and all the pressure. And when we still cannot do so, it kind of just puts us in this whole negative mindset of, we're constantly reminded of the lack. We're constantly
Mhm.
reminded of the limitations, and it's this negativity, and we lose trust in ourselves. And we're always, we're looking to other people to, okay, is there any program out there that can help you with this? Is there any resources?
Mhm.
Is there any ways I can adapt? And when you combine this way of life with parenting, it creates even more like this sense of, well, I'm lacking because of my disability, or you feel this shame or this guilt as a parent because I have even more limitations than the average parent. And so it's like adding on the disability exacerbates a lot of the common issues that a lot of parents feel. But I think we have even more of a conflict with this because our disability limits us in our parenting even more so. And I see, oh my gosh, Crystal, every day I see some sort of post on social media. I mean, I've joined a lot of groups, done a lot of Instagram. I'm like a huge like observer of a lot of different pouring out from parents of their just frustration, their shame, their feeling like they are lesser of a parent because they can't provide this experience for their child, or they can't take their child here, or they can't do this. And it's all due to their disability. And they feel this just, oh, and it's heartbreaking. But this is where I think your message and this style of parenting can really provide a lot of answers. Because if you're, for example, a wheelchair user and you have a child that you're trying to use the timeout method, but they're combative. They're saying, no, no, ma'am, I am not going to time out. And they're fighting you right and left. You may not have the physical ability to hold them accountable to that style. And so
Mhm.
next thing you know, you're being wishy-washy, and they sense that lack of alpha role from you, and they start
Yeah.
to push your buttons that much more because you're trying to do a parenting style that's not within your strengths. And this is a parenting style that I think any parent with a disability is going to be able to excel at because it focuses on the relationship. The relationship is more important than the behavior. It's more
Yes.
important than correcting and consequences and the negative and the positive reinforcements. It
Mhm.
teaches you how to bring those out naturally as they develop naturally. I highly recommend this book, guys. I highly recommend if you are really wanting to correct some of the difficult behaviors, if you're wanting to really figure out how to apply this parenting style to your household, and with the knowledge that you are adapting to a disability, I highly recommend you seek Crystal out, guys, because this is strong stuff that I think will give a lot of answers to a lot of people, and just creative thinking, problem solving, and helping us raise well-rounded, adjusted, compassionate, beautiful
Yeah.
kids.
I love everything you said, and the two things that I think stuck out to most to me when you were speaking was one, the answer isn't outside of ourselves. All of those people on Facebook,
Yes.
all of us are
Yep.
looking outside of ourselves. We're like, let me call a friend, let me ask my mom, let me talk to my random neighbor, right? We have all these hopefully the answer is out there, and the only reason we ever do that as people is because we don't believe that the answer is already inside of us. And I
Right.
believe so strongly that the answer is always inside of us. And the second thing you said is the focus on relationship over behavior. So as we focus on relationship and we kind of don't worry about the behavior modification. Like if I saw someone post on Facebook and say, my 5-year-old's hitting and I don't know what to do about it, and I'm worried that it's, going to be this big deal, focusing less on that. If you can, don't
Mm-hmm.
focus on it at all. And let's focus on how we can help their relationship. How can we connect with this child more? How can we fill him up more? And for sure, you don't
Yes.
have to just be like, hitting's fine. Like you can just say something really small and simple, right? Like, okay, gentle hands, or like, hey, we don't hit, or whatever, like whatever small little thing you want to say. But I find that so much advice out there is like phrases and like exact, um, I don't know, exact in this circumstance, do this specific thing. And that doesn't work. Like we need to be tapping into what our answer is so that no matter what's happening in life, we have the answer. There's not ever going to be an answer on Google for every single parenting struggle that we go through. So isn't it so much more helpful to feel like we already have the answers, that we have the parenting
Mm-hmm.
manual inside of us? And then the focus goes away from what are all the things I should and shouldn't be doing to how do I get myself in the mental space so that I can tap in to that inner parenting expert, that intuition that we as parents, moms and dads, all have.
Yes, I totally agree. Yeah, and I think another I had one. There was something that you said right then that it reminded me of something so important, and I totally lost it.
That is totally fine.
Oh, it's this. So I think another huge struggle with parents with disabilities is, we are because we're managing a disability. There's two issues here, and I'm going to hold on. I'm going to hang out. I'm going to switch rooms just real quick, guys, because we my husband just got home from work, so I'm going to put him on parenting duty just for a second and switch rooms. So hang on with me. But I'm going to continue my thought here. So parents with disabilities, I think, are constantly kind of sort of on that, nerve, kind of like higher nerve, higher agitation, higher irritability potentially because, we may be dealing with chronic pain. We may be dealing with, just whatever we're trying to manage on our own. And so self-care is so much more important than ever in that situation because then we're in a better place to be there and care for our children. But when the emotions are running high, I loved this about the book. It spoke and resonated with me so much that I was taught or I was led to believe growing up that when something happens, you have to address it in that moment.
Yes.
But when emotions are high, when your emotions are high, the child's emotions are high, that is not the time that learning can take place. It is
Yeah.
not the most efficient time. And so it is okay. I loved this about this book. Took so much pressure off of me as a parent. It is okay to step back, to just let things lie, don't address it, just move on, transition to something else, let
Mhm.
everything die down, process yourself internally so that you're in check. You're not going to yell and scream at your child. You're not going to overly guilt trip them, shame them, or anything like that. Why did you do this? And blah, 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 blah. That way, when you're both calm, you've both allowed things to rest and to settle, and they are more in a receptive frame of mind. You are at a better position to speak with authority and calm in a place of compassion and in that parenting role. That is when you want to conquer those difficult behaviors in those situations. And when they're screaming and you're screaming, guys, that's not doing anybody any favors.
Yeah.
And that's not the parent I wanted to be. And that's what I was doing. I had it, especially through these toddler years. I've got a two and
Mhm.
I mean, well, 3 and a 5-year-old now, but when they were 2 and 4, y'all, I felt like I was just screaming all the time.
Mhm.
And that's what this book did for me. It gave me that permission and the rationale. I was able to understand the science behind it that, okay, their brain is so focused on why they're upset, they're not going to be able to learn anything else. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
what I tell them or try to teach them. They're not going to be able to receive that. And I am not in the position to communicate it and meet them and come alongside them with their feelings when I am so wrapped up in my own. So
Mhm.
that was something I thought a lot of parents with disabilities could also really connect with. And taking that break, allow yourself to take care of yourself, bring your own emotions into check so that you can truly be there and understand your child's emotions and help them process together and learn the lesson that is from the incident, if you will. And I think a lot of parents with disabilities feel like, they're always just overwhelmed and they have to just scream at children all the time, and that
Mhm.
is not the case. So,
Yeah, and that's what life coaching, that's how the life coaching tools come in, I think, is because what you were describing, how that feeling of anxiety and kind of being on edge all the time, that's like alarm, right? It's like our brain is in like fight, flight, freeze, and it's always in that. And
right.
if we're in that, then we can't. Some people, I often call this the red zone. When I'm really high in emotions, I'm low on logic. It's
Mhm.
like a teeter totter. And when I'm high on logic, I'm
Mhm.
going to be lower on emotions. So it kind of goes back and forth like that. So when I'm in this like intense state of like alarm or feeling some really strong emotions, I'm not going to be making the most logical decisions in my parenting. And the same goes for my
Right.
child, like what you said. So I use red zone, yellow zone, green zone. And when I think about that, I think of like a red light, yellow light, green light. So red light would be when I'm
Mhm.
feeling those strong emotions, I'm not going to talk. I'm not going to text. I'm not going to respond or react. I'm just going to go take a break until I can get back down to the yellow or the green before I respond to that. And what I
Yeah.
find with my kids, especially now that they're older, is that oftentimes it doesn't even need to be addressed. Like if I wait the 12 or 24 hours after, my child will come back to me and say like, I'm really sorry that I did this yesterday. Like I know, I was just feeling really angry or whatever. The other reason I think this parenting style is so natural is that learning happens naturally. In every other
Yeah.
situation in life, we believe this, but we don't believe it in parenting. We're like, oh, okay, we
Yeah.
can just put our kids in school and they'll learn, and they learn because they're so curious. And we go to work and it's okay, we'll figure out, we'll learn, we'll we believe in learning in every situation. But in parenting, we're like, oh no, somehow for some reason now we have to force and coerce them to learn, because or otherwise the learning won't happen. And so anyway, so I think that whole aspect is really interesting, just to let ourselves take the time to like calm down and either address it or not later. And another
Mhm.
thing is to know that we do this thing called mirroring emotions. And so when we're really agitated and feeling strong emotions, then our children are going to also, and vice versa. And so the
Yes.
work really is the inner work to help us keep our calm and our presence during those situations when maybe they're not listening or they're having a meltdown or a tantrum, because those meltdowns and tantrums continue. They don't go away. They might look a little bit
Right.
different for a 15-year-old versus
Right.
a 5-year-old, but all of us have strong emotions. I still have tantrums, right? We all do. And so when
Yes,
I talk about
exactly.
tantrums, I don't mean that this only works when have toddlers. This works throughout the age. Um, yeah, so I really think it's taking the time to like calm ourselves down and then noticing what we're feeling and what we're thinking and doing our own inner work. And the inner work is what I do. That's what I do with my clients is let's tap into like what is blocking you from figuring out that intuition. We all have that intuition. It's kind of like deep down at our heart center. I think of it as like a feeling of confidence and of calm. And
Mhm.
I kind of help people work through what are the blocks that are blocking us from getting to that. And I thought of a couple that come up with clients that I'm going to mention. One is
Mhm.
self-doubt. So self-doubt would be like, I don't know the answer. I don't know what to do here. Maybe somebody else knows and I don't. Not trusting in your own answer. So self-doubt
Yeah.
can be a problem. Another one is self-judgment. So just like what you said in the beginning of the call, like that moms with disabilities might think like, well, I can't do it as well, or I don't know, just kind of being critical about what they can and can't do. And that judgment, that critical thinking, when we believe in that and we really lean into that, can kind of amplify and block us from tapping into the answer. Um,
Yes.
Another one is our past. If we're like, well, it's never worked before, or I've never been able to, not yell before, I've never been able to get my kids to listen before, we might use those past beliefs as evidence that we can't make changes now and that it won't work for us right now.
Mm. Mhm.
And the last one that I'm going to mention is expectations. When we have these really high expectations of ourselves, like even something like, I never want to yell, that might sound like a really nice thing to believe. But then if we do yell, we're going to feel so much worse about ourselves because we had that
Right.
expectation. So lowering our expectations of what we expect ourselves to be and do as a parent and with our children can really help us
Mhm.
tap into that answer. Um, so one of the things I like to do when I notice these blocks, they're blocks that come up for everybody. We all have these mindset blocks, is to write down some thoughts or belief stories. So Brene Brown always says the stories we're telling ourselves. So I think of these beliefs or thoughts as these stories we tell ourselves.
Okay.
Are we good?
Sorry. Yeah.
That's okay. That's okay.
I'm gonna step off the screen for just a second, but I've got my headset in. I'm still listening. You continue your thought
Keep
real
going.
quick.
I'll do it. Okay. So Brene Brown talks about the stories that we tell ourselves, which are really just our thoughts, right? So we have these ideas or these thoughts in our mind, and they're really just words or sentences, but we attach so much meaning to them. So what we want to do is just detach ourselves from these stories a little bit, and that will help detach ourselves from these belief blocks. So I'm going to go over the 4 things again.
Matt, come here.
If you're listening, you can get a little, piece of paper, whatever, or keep this in mind and do this exercise later. But what we want to do is have kind of do a thought dump out all of the stories and everything going on in our brain out onto paper. So the first one was self-doubt. So in what ways do you doubt yourself? And what are those thoughts in your mind that are keeping you swirling in doubt? The second one was judgment. How are you judgmental or critical about yourself? What are the stories in your brain about yourself when it comes to self-judgment? The third one was your past. So how are you sticking to past beliefs? What are they telling you? Like, I can't do this because I've never done it before. Write down those thought stories. And the fourth one was expectations. So what expectations do you have for yourself? And an expectation usually starts with something like should or shouldn't, like I should do this or I shouldn't do that. And it's kind of pressure. It feels like pressure and it feels kind of heavy. So if you feel that way, then you know that those stories are expectations. So once you've cleared all of those out, like I actually do this thought work for myself. I'll, have a journal or whatever, and I'm going to write things down or say it into a phone. But you really want to get the thoughts out of your brain because it helps you kind of gain awareness around what's going on. So the first one is just to write out all those things.
Because my son's wanting to play outside for just a bit. So I'm going to come join him outside while we talk.
Totally fine.
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Oh, I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, now I can. Oh, sorry. Okay. That was my fault. Okay.
That's okay.
Yes, I totally agree with that. Now, so real quick, I want to go to the chat because I was just looking at it a second ago, and people were wanting to know what book we are referring to. So if you're just now joining us, guys, we are speaking a book called Rest, Play, Grow, and it's by Deborah. What is it?
McNamara.
McNamara. Thank you. My screen reader never completely, it always mispronounces it. But Rest, Play, Grow. Guys, this is an awesome book. If you are a parent or grandparent or caregiver of any kind, guys, this book has so many great tips for parents with disabilities. It's a parenting style, like I said earlier, that is so applicable to our community because I really, really struggled with all those behavioral modification types of parenting styles. And hang on just a second, Bubs. You guys get to see my little one. Can you say hi? I'm running up and okay. Well, let's go back inside. So anyway, yeah, guys, so I wanted to say hello to everybody, answer that question. And if you have any questions, I can't see the chat right now, guys, since I'm outside, but feel free to comment them after we've closed the video out. Post your question there, and we will continue the conversation in the comment section down below. Make sure you hit the like button if you're liking this conversation thus far, and be sure to come back when we've completed so you can catch the full conversation because Crystal said so much great stuff here. I think this is a wonderful conversation so far. So I've had a few questions. People have put some questions in ahead of time. I went on Facebook. I'm in a group called Parenting with Disabilities, as
Right.
well as the Disabled Parenting Project Facebook. And so I posted there, and a few people have messaged me and commented some questions. And so one mom, she wanted to know specifically, she's got two little kids. She's thinking about adding on a third,
Mhm.
and how can she, like, what are some healthy expectations of how they might function with transportation needs, and how does the rhythms of guess of life change when you add that third child? And I just have two. I knew that I needed that we were happy with two, and that's where, our family needed to stop growing.
Mhm.
That was our healthy stopping point. And um, I have so many friends that have 3 and 4 children, and let me tell you, every little one makes a difference. I mean, it's
Yeah.
definitely a big transition. So,
Yeah.
I'm
So
gonna
I
let
think
you address that while I'm taking care of my little one again.
sounds good. So I think that it really, it's not really how many children, it's more the stages that I've noticed that they're in. So I have friends that have, 5, 6, 7, even more than that children. And some of them were easier and some of them were more difficult to add in. And I think it's more about the stages and phases that your kids are in. So for instance, if your child is in a phase where like they're not sleeping and they're tantruming all the time and they're not listening and you're just really struggling with them, then a second or a third child is going to be difficult at that point. But if things are going pretty smooth and maybe they're potty trained and maybe you're sleeping through the night and things are going well, it's going to seem a lot easier. So I don't really think it has so much to do with the number of children as far as how things are already working. And I think this whole kind of topic we're talking about is that the answer is inside of you. So what I help people uncover is their own specific answer. So I don't have a specific answer for you as to, oh, do this and it'll help, and that'll be your answer. But it's helping you uncover your answer. So what I would suggest for anyone who's listening that has a really specific question like that is to write out all of your struggles, write out all of the problems that you're having and all of the thoughts kind of going through your mind. And then once you take time to write out all those thoughts and let them out, kind of all those thought stories that we have keeping us stuck from our intuition, take a minute just to feel a feeling of confidence and of energy and of calm and of groundedness. And once you can allow that feeling to be present in your body, I want you just to do another thought dump. And in this thought dump, we're going to write down ideas that come to mind. And those ideas might be things like, well, we could try to do this with our kids, or we could maybe have our kid at this time, or whatever it is that comes into mind. And then just follow through with those and believe that intuition that you have and the answers that came are the answers for you personally. Because a lot of times we'll doubt ourselves and say, well, that didn't work out how I thought it was going to, so that couldn't have been my intuition. Well, yeah, it could have been. It could have been that it was just a learning experience. So I know that when we should add children and how and all of those things is very personal and very specific, but I also truly believe that we'll be able to find those answers inside of ourselves. So good luck. Good luck with
Yeah.
that question if you're listening to this.
Yes, and hopefully you guys can still hear me. I totally agree, and I think that is really the best approach. It's not the number. It's
Mhm,
really, where are the dynamics of your family, and just check in with everyone, emotionally, and know that, have healthy expectations that there will be changes, there will be adjustments, and
mhm,
making sure that, if you have a disability and you're managing that, you probably want to make sure that everybody is able to, just accommodate the adjustment of adding and making the family bigger. Um, and just making sure that, there's not going to be any other changes that would impact things. Like, you don't want everything to snowball all of a sudden.
mhm,
I wouldn't, recommend, oh, I was just diagnosed 6 months ago. I'm not sure what treatment's going to look like. Hey, let's have another baby, that
mhm.
kind of thing. But anyway, yeah. So let's see. I'm trying to think. I don't have my notes, of course, in front of me because my poor son, he is pretty sick, guys. So he's doing well right now. So I'm back, but I don't have my notes with me now as I've been traveling all over my house. Y'all have kind of gotten to see several rooms now. Um, but let me think. One mom, okay, yeah, so she asked about like um like she was really really struggling with sleep time and and that kind of thing. And my past experience has always been routine, 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 structure, structure, structure. And I feel like that hasn't really changed with the introduction of this, book into my life. It
Mhm.
still puts a lot of emphasis on routine and structure. I think that is a parent's I mean, that's like one of those gold nugget pillar things that if any parent was to share advice, which I don't recommend because, like we said, it's you will find your own answers
Mhm.
if you really just self-reflect with your child. But if there's any advice, it would be structure and routine. And I think that's even more so for parents with disabilities because it can really nip a lot of difficult behaviors in the bud because they're not surprised. They can anticipate things, transitions go a little bit smoother, when you have something consistently in place, which is, another thing to consider when you're adding on another child, all those routines and structures will change. And so maybe implementing some of those over time could be a good way to address that. But structure
Yeah.
and routine is great, especially managing sleep patterns.
Yeah, I think when I think about radical connection, which is kind of how I describe it, on the one end, you have permissive parenting, where you kind of just let your kids do whatever they want. You're more friends with your kids. You don't really give them a lot of guidance or rules. And on the other
Mm-hmm.
end, you have, on the other end of the continuum, you'd have authoritarian or disciplinarian kind of parenting style. And I think of connection based parenting as being right in that center. And so, like what you said with structure, I think of it as firm love.
Emmett, stay in here. Come here.
So I
Sorry,
think the
guys.
emphasis, that's okay. I think the emphasis would be more on love and less on firm, but you still need the firm. So firm would be having that structure. So maybe at every night you start your bedtime routine at 7 and you do kind of the same 3 or 4 things. I think having that structure is really important. But within that structure, you want the focus to be on love and connection. So if you're trying to just rush through it so you can get it done and get them to bed, that's not going to be
Mm-hmm.
a helpful routine. You want the emphasis to
Right.
be on as much ways to connect with them as possible. So snuggles, if you can do snuggles, reading books to them, if you can do that, listening to music together while you lay together and rub their back, having a bath time where you sit and your phone is gone and you're completely focused on them. Anything that you can do to kind of fill them up with that connection, that's what's going to be most powerful in helping them sleep. Because for them, when they close their eyes and go to sleep at night, they don't know that they're going to see you again in the morning. I mean, logically, we think that they would know that at that age, but for most kids, it's hard for them to really wrap their heads around it. Even if they feel like they understand, when they go to sleep and they're asleep, they're like, what's going to happen? Like, am I still going to see you in the morning? So, having that structure and routine, but having it be focused on connection and then also helping them bridge that gap. And so saying things like, I'll see you in your dreams. And maybe, what are you going to dream about tonight? And, trying to
Yes.
still connect with them, even when you're not going to be present with them. Um, and another thing I would add is definitely lowering your expectations. So if your child's really struggling, my kids very struggle with sleep a lot, and you're still doing those things, just to lower expectations of what it should look like. It is totally fine for them to lay in bed with you. It's fine for them to get up lots of times in the night. It's actually very developmentally normal for kids at
Mm-hmm.
1, 3, 5, even 7 or older to want to come into
Yes.
bed with you because they're scared or they're worried or they're anxious. Those things are
Yes.
normal. And if they're
Yes.
met with resistance of like, I don't want this to be happening, this is too hard, and we're
Right.
kind of frustrated, which I've totally been there. I've been that mom in the middle of the night. It actually amplifies the problem. So if we can just lower the expectation that they should sleep through the night or that they should go to sleep at a certain time easily, then we are able to show up with that connection and compassion and empathy that is so powerful. And that will be in the end, like my son has just crazy sleep issues. And they have really been able to be helped by that, with just me lowering my expectation and being okay with him coming in a bunch of times and being okay with me sleeping with him if that's how he sleeps best, until he gets more comfortable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think a combination of structure and lowering your expectation, but having the main focus be on everything you're doing in the evening being to fill them their connection bucket.
Yeah. Let's see. So one of the I had a tip that I was gonna. Oh, I remember. So this was, I had an issue with potty training. So lowering my expectations, that is kind of counterintuitive for me. Like I thought, okay, I'm one of those parents where like, okay, I have this expectation, I got to stick to my guns. I was that
Mhm.
I was kind of that thinker. Like I got to stick to my guns, or I'm going to look weak, or I'm picking my battles. This is one. We're gonna stick to it. And so my daughter, I I just I she was my firstborn, my first, go at potty training. And I thought, okay, she's two, she's almost two. I really wanted her to be potty trained before my son comes along. So I only have one in diapers. That whole, parenting dream of only having one in
Mhm.
diapers. I thought this is totally doable. Everyone keeps talking about, oh, I potty trained my child in
Mhm.
3 days and 5 days, and oh, blah, blah, blah. It's possible. And so it set this expectation up. And I did not account for the fact that every child is different, every parent is different,
Mhm.
every situation and household is different. And just because it happens and you see all these positive success stories doesn't mean that it's going to happen for you and that it's a healthy expectation for your family.
Yep.
And I was looking at it as, well, if everyone else can do it, then that means it's possible. But I did not realize, I was not considering at what expense. And so I had a very difficult time potty training my daughter. We started, like I said, when she was right before she was age 2. It took me probably 2 years to potty train her, because I, number one, started too soon. I pushed it
Mhm.
before, she was kind of ready, but when she regressed and started to rebel, when I pushed that much more, and that was the wrong reaction. Instead of
Yeah.
letting her come to it naturally on her own, which was the style that I did with my son, the experience was night and day. Now, granted, they are two different kids, but the expectations we have can push us in the wrong direction when our children
Mhm.
are telling us, no, I need to go a different direction. And
Yeah.
letting go of our expectations, and that even goes for behaviors in society. Like society and our culture says, oh, well, they must act this way.
Mhm.
It's okay if they're 5 years old. And if my son is wanting to wear my high heels or something, like, something silly like that,
Mhm.
it's harmless. But you've got people, our culture will like sometimes cringe. Oh, no, boys need to be boys and girls need to be, that type
Mhm.
of cultural pressure. And it's important, I think, even as parents with disabilities, to let those expectations go, internal and external, and listen, because that's what allows you to it frees your mind up to be
Yes.
open to their agenda, because their agenda is not always wrong.
Not always ours.
And
It's usually like
yes,
if we can lower those expectations of them, then it's so much easier for us to parent in a way that is natural and intuitive, because there's so much
right,
cultural pressure to parent in a strict and heavy handed way because that's how they were raised. So they were like, oh, it's fine. I turned out totally fine. Well, totally fine. I mean, look at the suicide rates and mental health rates and all of those things. Totally fine. It's like our culture is not totally fine, guys. So
right.
But just believing that like you're doing it your way and that that's okay. It doesn't matter what culture is doing. We can just do it our own way and release those expectations we have of ourselves. And that in and of itself, if you get nothing else from our conversation today, will be so freeing for you to just
Yes.
release all of that and allow yourself to parent in a way that feels good to you. And I love that in your story, Cindy, you were able to use what you learned with your first child to then change your the way you did it with your second. So I look at those as like that was exactly how it was supposed to be. I was supposed to
Yes.
potty train for 2 years so that then when my second child came along, I did it this way. And instead of using those mistakes or that we view as mistakes as kind of tools against ourselves or weapons, I should say, against ourselves, instead of using them as learning experiences.
Yes. So I'm going to allow anyone in the chat to, if there's any questions in the
Yeah.
chat right now, just put a Q in front of it. Go ahead, post it now, and if we haven't addressed it yet, repost it for me. I'm going to just really pay attention to the chat for just a second. And so while I give people a chance to post those questions real quick, we're kind of to the tail end, sort of the Q&A portion of today. I wanted to just reiterate for any future parents or parents that I've had one child, but people are hinting to me that because of a disability, I probably shouldn't have another one, whatever your case may be. If you feel like you are approaching parenthood in fear and not the healthy, normal fear, we all are, afraid in the beginning, right? Like not sure what to
Yeah.
expect and how it's going to impact our lives. Totally normal fears there. But if you have a disability and you have a lot of these external judgmental fears that are coming from a place of lack of education, misconceptions, misunderstanding due to your disability, I want to challenge you to really self-reflect and read this book and to get with your community of other parents to help address those fears, because people with disabilities are every bit as capable of being beautiful, excellent caregivers and parents as much as anyone else, if not more so. I think one of the things that I love about this book is it really acknowledges the importance of finding our tears, and it's just as much the adult finding our tears.
Yep.
With disabilities, I cry all the time, guys. I mean, it's just a
Yep.
healthy part of grieving those limitations and that loss of ability. But helping your children find their tears is so vital to understanding and accepting those futilities in life, those things we have to accept. It's futile to fight it. And I love that about this book. And I think that's another important takeaway for our community is understanding that because we have to face so many futilities in our own journey as individuals with disabilities, we are able to teach that to our children. We're able to model that for our children. And I think it is a beautiful thing and something that our kids get to know and see and learn at such a deep, humbling level that parents without disabilities may have a more difficult time exposing their children to, if that makes sense. I think it provides just a very deep level of understanding and compassion for those futilities in life. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, it's futilities. Like,
Yes, that is the right
yeah,
word I think I'm looking for. But yes, I loved
yeah,
that part of the book as well.
yeah.
I'm
I
going to let
think
you
I
respond to that, and then I'm going to read these questions real quick
sure,
while you're responding.
sure. So yeah, I was just thinking even last night I was crying about one of my children, and I think it's so
Yes.
helpful to release that sadness and that grief that sometimes comes in parenting because we don't want to get stuck in those emotions. And so it's so helpful to release them. And I parent a lot of children who are neurodivergent, which means they have a lot of different diagnoses. And so it makes it difficult. There is a lot of things. That was a sadness I had yesterday that I was with this expectation that I had that was happening, and just didn't happen. Anyways, so we do that often in life where we put these expectations on ourselves as being too high, and then we're frustrated about it instead of being um, judgmental about where we are at for ourselves, just to accept where we're at and accept our emotions, accept our thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
accept our
Mm-hmm.
actions. And the more acceptance and love and compassion we can give to ourselves, it flows out from us to all the people around us. That it's easier to be that way in parenting. And if we have a partner, it's easier to be that way around them. It's easier to be that way around our friends and family. The more that we can pour into ourselves. So, like what you said, taking care of ourselves. True self-care is speaking to ourselves in a loving way and forgiving ourselves when we don't, and having compassion for where we are. And I think it's even more so important, like what you said, with parents with disabilities, to just have so much love and compassion for yourself. And the one thing I kind of want to end off with is just to believe in yourself. Believe that you are amazing, that you are of worth, that you are worthy of love and belonging and connection. And I think that when we can have that inner belief in ourselves and work on that, that all of these other little problems get solved. They kind of solve themselves on their own when we can focus on that belief in ourselves and that love in ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it glitched
Can
out
you
for a
guys
minute,
hear
but
me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Okay. Okay, good.
All right.
So I haven't seen any questions come in that we haven't already addressed. So I'm
Okay.
going to leave it at there. I think this was a
Yeah.
beautiful conversation, Crystal. Thank you so very much. I think this is a community that, I think needs support, and not, everyone thinks that when you reach out, or you're trying to build your community and your village and get that support, that it's a bad thing, that it means you're lesser
Yeah.
or lacking or not doing a good enough job. But it's the complete opposite, guys, because it's just more tools in your kit. It is more resources and more people, that's got your back and that can lift us up, because this is hard stuff. And so parents with disabilities, we are a growing population as medical, advances occur, more treatments out there. There's just, as the population grows, so does our community. And it's so important to have people like you, Crystal, on board, and there is a resource for us, and to know that it is okay to reach out to a professional like yourself and to each other as a community to get a little extra feedback, a little extra encouragement, food for thought, great, recommendations like this book, Rest, Play, Grow. I
Mhm.
will make sure, I will try to link that in the
Yeah.
description box as well in the future. So come back, guys, if there's any part of the discussion you missed. This was packed full of a lot of different things. I thought it was very, very productive. So thank you so much, Crystal, for joining me today, guys, and you all as well at home. Thanks for listening and joining us. And I'm going to sign off there. Crystal, her links and everything will be in the description box down below as
Yep.
well. Thank you all so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. All right, guys. Bye.
Bye.